Hello everyone, this time let me discuss measure supposition of group data. Now take a look at the formula that we're going to use for us to solve for the percentile, decile, quartile of group data. Example number 1, determine quartile 1 using the frequency table below or using the frequency distribution below. So here we can see scores from 60 to 99. Looking at the scores are already grouped. That's why this is about finding the measures of position of group data. Now, on the second column, we have number of students. We call it frequency. When we say number of students, for example, two students got 60 to 64 score, five got 65 to 69, and so on up to the last. And there are 50 students in all, or there are 50 scores in all. So let's solve this data. Let's solve this by applying the formula. There are 7 steps to follow. Let's start with step 1. Construct the cumulative frequency column. As we can see here, we have now the third column, which is the cumulative frequency, or CF. To do this, simply copy the first frequency, which is 2. Okay, and the next is 7. Why 7? Because 2 plus 5 is 7. Simply add the next frequency. Next to 7, 7 plus 9, 16. 16 plus 10, 26. 26 plus 8, 34. 34 plus 7, 41. 41 plus 5, 46. And finally, 46 plus 4 is 50. See to it that the last number, that the last cumulative frequency should be equal to the number of scores or number of students. Meaning to say n here is equal to 50, your last entry here should be 50. If this is not 50, something is wrong with your addition. So that's one thing that you're going to remember when you are entering the cumulative frequency. Next, let's have step number 2. Let's get Kn over M. So K stands for quartile 1. So it's 1. And then N, the number of scores, there are 50. And M is referring to quartile, which means 4. That's why we have to determine 1/4 of the total number of values. So again, why 1/4? Because we're going to look for quartile 1. So 1, then over 4. Because quartile is referring to 4 equal parts. Total number of values, so there are 50 values or scores in all. So to solve this, we have 1 times 50 over 4. 1, quartile 1, 50 times 50. There are 50 scores over 4. It's the same as 1/4 times 50, which is 12.5. And the next, this 12.5 will be our guide to locate to where quartile 1 is. So the quartile 1 class is the interval that contains 1/4 of the class observations that is in the interval 70 to 74. Where is that? So this is the row where we can see 70 to 74. So here. So meaning to say 12.5, 12.5 here is the determinant. This is our locator. 12.5, where is 12.5? Looking at the CF, 12.5 falls here in 16. If you will count from 2, 7, 16, so 12.5 will fall under here or within 16. That's why we have to highlight this row where we can see 70 to 74, which is considered the quartile 1 class. Step number 2 is very important because all the next steps will be depending on this. Once your step 2 or the solution of your step number 2 is wrong, then the rest will be wrong also. step number 3, we have to locate CF or cumulative frequency. Determine the cumulative frequency before quartile 1 class. In the previous step, we found out that our quartile 1 class is 70 to 74. So this will be our basis for us to locate the cumulative frequency. So it says here it is before quartile 1 class. So if this is our quartile 1 class, then we have to consider the cumulative frequency before this, which is 7. So here, note that CF is either less than or equal to n over 4. Our n over 4, which we computed in step number 2, is 12.5. Now, since we cannot see here 12.5, it should be the one which is less than 12.5, and that is 7. That's why our CF here is equal to 7. So CF or cumulative frequency is 7. Next, let's have step number 4, and here we're going to find the frequency. Determine the frequency of quartile 1 class. Again, our quartile 1 class is this row 70 to 74, and here we have to consider the 9 itself. Note that F is the actual frequency aligned with the same row as the interval, or aligned with the same row as the quartile 1 class. So if our quartile 1 class is here, take number 9, which is the frequency allotted for 70 to 74. So our frequency is equal to 9. Step number 5, let us determine the lower class boundary of quartile 1 class. Again, quartile 1 class is very important, which is the result of solving or doing step number 2. And in step number 2, we determined that our quartile 1 class is 70 to 74. So step number 2 plays a very important role in this solution. So here, looking at 70 to 74, we have to determine the lower class boundary. And how to do that? Simply do this solution. So here, 70, you take 70, the lower number compared to 74, and then simply subtract 0.5. So 70 minus 0.5 is equal to 69.5. Or another way of doing this is simply add 69, which is the number before 70, this one, and add to 70, divide by 2, 69.5 also. But I think it's better to do the first one, simply subtract 0.5, or simply get the middle between 69 and 70. So 69.5. Therefore, our lower class boundary is 69.5. Step number 6, let us determine the class width. Class width or CW is also represented by letter I. So here we can see that I is equal to 5. This is the class width. Sometimes I is not given and you will be the one to determine this. And how to determine it? Simply take two numbers, the higher number minus the lower number. Vertical. So vertical. Like 65 minus 60, 95 minus 90, 85 minus 80. That's also the same as 69 minus 64 is equal to 5. 74 minus 69 is equal to 5 also. So anything that you want to subtract, one is higher than the other, or taking the two numbers vertically, then subtract, it's all the same. And here, in this case, I is equal to 5. So again, simply take two numbers and then subtract to get the class width. Like in the example here, 65 minus 60 is equal to 5. So this is our class width. Finally, let's have the last step. Step number 7, substitute the values obtained in the formula. we can now use the formula. So here we have to substitute all the values that we have computed starting step number 2 up to step number 6. Looking at this, L is the lower class boundary, which is 69.5, plus Kn over M is 12.5, minus Cf, or cumulative frequency, is equal to 7, all over 9, which is the frequency. In close parentheses, times 5, which is the class width. Now, solving this will give us 72.56. So, quartile 1 is 72.56. This is the exact quartile 1, or this is the score referring to quartile 1. We know that quartile 1 is 25%. To interpret the result, we can say that there are 25% of the students whose scores are below or equal to 72.56. And those are the students with the scores of 60 up to 70 or 72.56. And how many are they? There are 12.5, so more or less 12 students. So we have to consider those students who got 60 to 70. So that's it. We're done with this problem. There are 7 steps to follow, and all you have to do is to be careful in doing all the steps, especially step number 2. Example number 2, determine decile 5 using the frequency distribution below. Let us do all the 7 steps here. Let us have first step number 1, cumulative frequency. Copy the first frequency, which is 2, then add the next. 2 plus 6 is 8. 8 plus 9, 17. 17 plus 10, 27. 27 plus 12, 39. 39 plus 7, 46. And 46 plus 4, 50. Now, let us add for us to determine the number of scores or the number of students. 2 plus 6, 8 plus 9, 17 plus 10, 27 plus 12, 39 plus 7, 46 plus 4, 50. And for I, or class width, 44 minus 40 is 4. Another is 24 plus 20, so it's really 4. Now, let's have step number 2. Let us determine the 5 over 10, decile 5, 5 over 10, which is also 50% or 0.5 of 50. So, 5 over 10 or 1/2 of 50 is 25. So, 25. This is our basis to locate the decile 5 class. Looking at the cumulative frequency, 25 falls here. So this will be our decile 5 class. So this is very important because all the other steps depend on this interval or this row. 32 to 35 is the decile 5. Now let us determine the cumulative frequency. Cumulative frequency is the number before this class. So, and that is 17. Next is the frequency of this interval or decile 5. This is 10. So, 10. Next is the lower class boundary. Simply minus 5 from 32. So, 32 minus 0.5. Rather, not minus 5, it's minus 0.5. 32 minus 0.5 is 31.5. And of course, the class width or I is equal to 4. So we can now use the formula and substitute all these values. Decile 5 is equal to L, the lower class boundary is 31.5. So 31.5 plus, open parentheses, That's 25. The 50% or 5 over 10 of 50 is 25. Minus cumulative frequency, which is 17. And then over frequency, which is 10. In close parentheses times the class width, which is 4. And then let us solve this. 31.5 plus, let us do all this first. Meantime, copy 31.5 plus 25 minus 17 divided by 10 times 4. When we compute, will give us 3.2. And then let's add 31.5 plus 3.2 is equal to 34.7. So 34.7 is the decile 5. Looking at the interval here, 34.7 is really within this interval or within this decile 5 plus. Therefore, our answer is correct. Take note that if your final answer is not within the class interval, then something is wrong with the computation. That's one thing that you have to remember when computing like this. So that's all about the examples on how to compute for the measure supposition of group data. So thank you for watching.